Backstabbing and scheming and arse-licking and money-grubbing. Sometimes I don't know what holds it together.
Our marriage.
Game of Thrones is packed with amazing scenes you've probably seen analyzed more than once.
Yes, it is.
But if there's one that blows my mind every time I watch, it's this one, a quiet scene from season 1. No dragons, no battles, no shocking deaths, just Robert and Cersei sitting in a small room and talking.
I suppose this is where you tell me to give the job to your brother Jaime.
In many ways, this scene is an absolute masterpiece, not only for its character development, but also for its amazing storytelling, managing to condense almost 2 decades of history into just 7 minutes of dialogue. But what's even more fascinating is that it wasn't actually written by George Martin himself. Instead, it came from David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the same writers who got tons of hate for the show's ending. I mean, sure, I'll talk about all those things that make the scene a masterpiece in detail, but first we need some context. This conversation takes place right after Ned Stark resigns as Hand of the King, following Robert's decision to have the pregnant Daenerys Targaryen killed.
The whore is pregnant.
On the surface, Westeros may seem stable, but its foundations are starting to crumble. Cersei fears that Robert will discover the truth, that Jaime is the real father of her children. At the same time, Ned Stark inches closer to this revelation with each passing day. On top of that, there's the looming threat of a Dothraki invasion hanging over the kingdom. And the scene begins with this political tension, but it quickly shifts to something much more personal. And by the end, we come to realize that neither Robert nor Cersei is exactly who they appear to be. First of all, what's truly fascinating about Robert in this scene is how it shows he's way more perceptive than people give him credit for. I mean, yes, on the surface he comes across as this man who drowns himself in women and wine, someone who never got over losing his true love, which I think that idea itself is a delusion. But when it came to war and his enemies, he knew exactly what he was dealing with. He could see right through people, understanding how they'd react in different situations. And even though he acted like he didn't care, he was actually really bothered by what others thought of him.
Still those in the Seven Kingdoms who call me usurper.
Moreover, he wasn't blind to what was really going on in his kingdom after the rebellion either. He knew exactly what had put that crown on his head. While the small council labeled him as someone indifferent, Robert understood the Seven Kingdoms better than most of them ever did. People like Varys and Tywin might have called him a drunken fool, but Robert was anything but foolish.
How long do the people of the Seven Kingdoms stand behind their absentee king?
The thing is, the scene works on 2 levels. It reveals just as much about Cersei as it does about Robert, maybe even more. While we get a glimpse of her vulnerable side, we also catch hints of the traits that will come back to haunt her. For example, how she constantly overestimates her own intelligence and trying so hard to be like her father Tywin, from the way he thinks to how he sees the world.
It's a neat little trick you do. You move your lips and your father's voice comes out.
Up to this point, the scene builds masterfully, dropping subtle hints about both characters that aren't immediately obvious. But it reaches its peak when they discuss their marriage and inevitably Lyanna. Robert keeps on his on-point observations, reflecting that after the rebellion, the realm lost its common purpose that once united everyone.
Our purpose died with the Mad King.
Now, with a possible Dothraki invasion looming, he sees no force strong enough to bring people together, because the realm has devolved into a nest of schemers, each willing to commit horrible acts for their own interest. And when Robert asks what's left holding it together, Cersei's answer is brilliant: their marriage. At that moment, these 2 people whose marriage was broken from the very beginning share a genuine sense of empathy and understanding, perhaps for the first time. But the tragic part is they both know it won't change anything, because they both understand that seeing each other's pain or truly understanding one another doesn't necessarily mean they can get along. I think this is where the show transcends typical fantasy storytelling and becomes something deeply human. For a second, it feels like we're watching an intimate scene from an indie film. 2 people trying to make sense of their failed relationship. When they share a laugh, the tension seems to ease, but this is just the beginning. What follows is one of the most iconic moments in the entire show, because for the first time in 17 years, Cersei asks what Lyanna Stark looked like. As viewers, we feel the weight of this question hanging in the air, because earlier scenes had already hinted at how Lyanna's ghost lingered between them, so hearing Cersei finally speak her name hits us much like it hits Robert himself, catching us off guard, yet feeling somehow inevitable. And the rest is that legendary scene we know.
I want to know the horrible truth. I can't even remember what she looked like. I only know she was the one thing I ever wanted. Someone took her away from me. And 7 kingdoms couldn't fill the hole she left behind.
Now, most of us would agree that this is one of the most heartbreaking lines in Game of Thrones. But what if I told you that if you look closely, you'll realize it carries a much darker subtext than you might think, especially when you consider what we know about Robert's sharp memory. I mean, think about it. Robert can remember the faces of everyone he's killed.
But I still remember every face.
That Tarly boy who tried to kill him, and even Bessie and her teats. But he can't remember Lyanna's face, the woman he claims was the love of his life, the one he says could never be replaced. The thing is, those scenes where we see Robert's sharp memory aren't just random character-building moments. They're actually part of something brilliant that ties into a deeper layer of the story, one that only exists in the books. Because in the books, we see that Ned often questions Robert's love for Lyanna. There's even a chapter where he talks to Robert directly, telling him that he never truly knew Lyanna as well as he did. For him, Robert only saw her beauty, but not the real woman behind it. We learned that even Lyanna had doubts about Robert's love. She knew about his womanizing nature, his bastard child, and understood that he'd never be faithful to anyone. And the show cleverly references at these aspects through several scenes. For example, remember this one.
All I wanted to do was crack skulls and girls.
You see, Robert's womanizing wasn't just a reaction to losing Lyanna, it was always there. Even if they had married, he wouldn't have found happiness with her. He wasn't truly in love with Lyanna herself, but rather with the idea of her, with a fantasy of what could have been. When you look at it this way, Cersei's tragedy carries more weight than Robert's. While Robert built his broken persona around self-delusion, Cersei's story is quite different. As she admits, she truly loved Robert once and wanted their marriage to work out, but Robert couldn't let go of Lyanna's memory, and that basically poisoned everything they could have had. Cersei's being pretty honest here. Well, until the very end, when she claims she doesn't feel anything anymore. The thing is, what we're seeing here is an act. She's putting on a show, projecting a tough, self-centered image that becomes even more visible as the show goes on. No matter what she says, she can't truly let go of the pain of Robert's rejection. If you look closely, you can see it from Cersei's face. She swallows hard, it's like her vulnerability laid bare, and she tries to hide it by taking a sip of wine. But don't make a mistake, this pain is not out of love. This is the pain of a narcissist, and let's be honest, that fits Cersei perfectly.
I don't distrust you because you're a woman. I distrust you because you're not as smart as you think you are.
Let me explain it this way. When Robert says no to her, he unintentionally lays bare the futility of Cersei's attempts to win his love, or even his attention. And this hits her hard, triggering a storm of reflection on the pain and emptiness she's been carrying for years. So when she brings it up with him, it's not just about their marriage, it's about everything she feels she's been denied. She's still furious about being sidelined for a dead woman, and trapped in a life where her feelings have never truly mattered. At this point, you might wonder, if this is the case, why is she bringing this up after 17 years? I believe the answer is simple, because she's already made up her mind to kill him. You can actually see it from the moment where she leaves Robert's question unanswered. She knew that after that decision, this will be her last chance to get the answer to all those questions swirling in her head, her only chance for her to process these messed up feelings. That's exactly why she has this conversation with Robert, and that's why she later confronts Ned Stark.
You've always hated him.
Hated him? I worshipped him. Every girl in the Seven Kingdoms dreamed of him, but he was mine by oath. And when I finally saw him on our wedding day in the Sept of Baelor, lean and fierce and black-bearded, it was the happiest moment of my life.
At the end of the scene, Cersei delivers her final words and walks out, leaving Robert in silence. Nothing has changed, yet everything is different. And here in this simple room, we actually find something rare and precious. A perfect storm of character and conflict that reminds us why we tell stories in the first place. Maybe that's why, even if this scene wasn't written by George Martin, it captures something he understood perfectly. The only thing worth writing about is the human heart in conflict with itself. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a comment, give a like, and click to subscribe. Your support will greatly help the mysterious algorithm notices me. And if you want to support me personally, you can join the channel by using the join button. See you next time.